The Adewale family lived in a modest two-bedroom flat in Ibadan, tucked inside a noisy compound where children's laughter, generators hum, and the cries of street vendors filled the air. Every evening, no matter how tired, they gathered around the dining table, a scratched wooden piece passed down from generations. It was the one tradition their mother, Mabel, refused to let die. That evening, the table groaned under a simple meal of rice and beans. Mabel bowed her head, her voice soft but firm. "Let us pray." Her husband, Kunle, sighed but closed his eyes. He had returned from another long, fruitless day of searching for work, his shirt damp with sweat. Their eldest, David, 19, sat tense, carrying the silent frustration of a young man watching his dreams of university fade under unpaid fees. Beside him, his sister Tolu, 15, scribbled in her school notebook, even during the meal, determined to be the first in the family to become a lawyer. The youngest, Femi, 9, played with his spoon, humming a church chorus under his breath. When the omen echoed, silence stretched across the table. The food was meager, but Mabel forced a smile. "We are still here. That alone is God in us." David scoffed under his breath, though not loud enough for his mother to hear. His faith was thinning, worn down by disappointment. Later that night, as the compound grew quiet, Kunle sat outside under the flickering bulb, staring into the humid night. His neighbor, Al-Haji Musa, stopped by. "Kunle, I hear one man is recruiting security guards. Pay is small, but it's something." Kunle forced a smile, though his pride ached. Once, he had been a bank officer. Now, he struggled to feed his children. Inside, Mabel knelt beside the bed, whispering prayers for strength. She didn't ask God for riches anymore, only for peace in their home, and for her children not to lose hope. And in that moment, though unseen, it seemed the walls themselves breathed with her prayer, as if whispering back, "God is in you, hold on." Saturday mornings in the Adewale home usually meant chores, laughter, and the smell of akara frying in the oil. But this Saturday was different. The landlord had come. Mr. Ade, the compound landlord, stood in the small sitting room, his voice sharp. "Kunle, it has been for months. If you cannot pay the rent by the end of this week, I will lock this flat." Kunle's head dropped, shame burning through him. "Please, sir, just one more month. I am still looking for work. My children, your children will sleep outside if you don't bring money." Mr. Ade cut him off. "I am not running a charity." He stormed out, leaving the door rattling on its hinges. The children had heard everything. Tolu's pencil dropped from her hand. Femi's eyes filled with tears. David clenched his fists, anger burning inside him. "So this is it. We will beg until the street swallows us." Mabel moved quickly, placing her hand on his shoulder. "We will not be swallowed. David, we will stand. This family will stand." But David pulled away, his voice bitter. "What's the point of praying if nothing changes? God may be in you, Mama, but I don't see him in us." He stormed out of the room, the front door slamming behind him. Silence hung heavy in the flat. Mabel's heart ached at her son's words, but she straightened her back, forcing strength she didn't feel. "Children," she whispered to the younger ones, "this is when faith speaks the loudest, when the walls tremble." That night, as rain pounded on the roof, Kunle sat by the window, his hands in his head. "Mabel, maybe I should take the job as a security guard. At least it will keep us off the street." She looked at him with tired but steady eyes. "Kunle, you are more than this season. Don't let shame steal your hope. God will make a way." Yet even as she spoke, a tear slipped down her cheek, and in the silence of that stormy night, the family felt the walls around them shake, not just with thunder, but with the weight of choices, fear, and a faith being tested. David wandered the streets long after the rain had stopped. The neon lights of Bodija Market reflected in the puddles at his feet, but he hardly noticed. His mind burned with anger at the landlord, at poverty, at God, at everything. He ended up at a small shop where his friend Sei worked, fixing phones and selling spare parts. Sei grinned when he saw him. "My guy, you look like someone who swallowed pepper. What's wrong?" David slumped on a stool. "We are about to be thrown out of the house. My father can't find work. My mother, she keeps praying, but nothing is changing. I'm tired, Sei, tired." Sei leaned closer, lowering his voice. "There's a way out if you're bold enough. Some boys I know, they make quick money. Deliveries, errands, sometimes rough work. No questions asked. Last week one of them bought a new phone cash down." David's eyes narrowed. He had heard whispers of such things, street jobs that smelled of danger. "I can't," he muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. "My family, my mother." Sei smirked. "Your mother's prayers won't pay rent. Think about it. A few runs, quick cash, and you'll save your family from sleeping outside. What kind of son would you be if you didn't?" The word sank deep into David's heart, twisting his anger into temptation. That night, when he returned home, he found his mother praying by the flickering candle, her voice hoarse but steady. She looked up at him, her face glowing with tears. "David," she whispered, "I don't know what tomorrow will bring. But remember, God is in us, even in the fire. Don't let the fire change who you are." Her words cut through him, but his fists clenched. For the first time, David wondered if faith alone was enough. And as he lay on his bed, Sei's words echoed louder than his mother's prayer. "Quick money. Save your family. Be the man." In the darkness, David realized he stood at a crossroads, one path of faith, the other of compromise, and the weight of his choice pressed heavily on his young shoulders. The following evening, David slipped out of the flat before anyone could question him. The streets of Ibadan pulsed with life, hawkers shouting, Danfo buses screeching, but David's mind was fixed on one thing, proving he could save his family. He met Sei near a dimly lit junction. Two older boys leaned against a car, their eyes sharp, their voices low. One of them sized David up and smirked. "This the new recruit?" Sei nodded. "He's hungry." The taller boy handed David a small envelope. "Simple delivery. No questions. Drop this at Dugby, come back, and you'll see money like you've never touched before." David's fingers trembled as he tucked the envelope into his jacket. He told himself it was harmless, just one run. If it meant keeping his family from eviction, wasn't it worth it? But on his way, he felt the weight of the envelope like fire against his chest. He thought of his mother's tired eyes, her whispered prayers, her words echoing, "Don't let the fire change who you are." At home, Mabel was waiting for him. She had noticed his restless steps, his new silences. "David," she said softly as he walked in, "where have you been?" "Out," he muttered, avoiding her gaze. But before she could press further, Femi burst into tears in the corner. He had overheard neighbors gossiping about the landlord's threats. "Mama, will we really sleep outside? Will we lose our home?" David's heart clenched. He wanted to shout that he had fixed everything, that money was coming. But the words stuck in his throat, heavy with shame. That night, as he lay awake, the envelope hidden under his pillow, David felt the crushing truth. Sometimes, the cost of quick answers is heavier than the problem itself. And as he closed his eyes, he heard it not in a whisper, not in a dream, but in the quiet beating of his heart. "God is in us, trust me." For the first time, David wept not from anger, but from the fear of losing himself. The next morning, David woke before dawn, the envelope still under his pillow. His heart pounded as he slipped it into his school bag, telling himself he would finish the delivery before anyone noticed. But as he stepped into the street, a hand gripped his arm. It was his father, Kunle. "Where are you going so early, my son?" Kunle's eyes were sharp despite the tired lines across his face. David froze. "Just to see a friend." Kunle's gaze dropped to the bulge in the bag. He didn't ask what it was. Instead, he said quietly, "David, I know you think I've failed you, failed this family. But don't let my failure push you into darkness, please." The words pierced David deeper than the landlord's threats, deeper than Say's temptations. He nodded stiffly and walked away. But his father's voice followed him like a shadow. At Dugby Junction, the handover should have been simple. But before David could cross the street, two police vans screeched to a stop. Armed officers jumped out, shouting, grabbing the very boys he had met with the night before. David froze, the envelope burning in his bag. "Run," one of the boys shouted. But David couldn't move. His legs locked, his chest heaving. At that moment, he realized what he was carrying wasn't just paper, it was chains, waiting to drag him and his family down. By some miracle, the police didn't notice him in the chaos. Heart pounding, he slipped into an alley and tore the envelope open. Wads of cash stared back at him, but wrapped between the notes was a sachet of white powder. His hands shook violently. He dropped it all, running until his lungs burned. That night, David returned home empty-handed. His clothes dirty, his eyes hollow. Mabel was waiting. She didn't scold him. She simply pulled him into her arms and whispered through tears, "God kept you, my son. Don't let the shadows win." For the first time in months, David broke down fully, sobbing into his mother's chest. Femi and Tolu came close, wrapping their arms around him. Kunle joined them, his pride swallowed by the need to hold his family together. In that fragile circle of tears and trembling hope, the Adewale family realized something powerful. They were broken, but they were unbroken together. And as the candlelight flickered on their faces, it seemed to whisper what Mabel had always believed: God in us is greater than the world against us. The Adewale home felt different after that night of tears. Something had broken in the shadows, and though their problems remained, there was a quiet strength in the air. For the first time in weeks, the family ate breakfast with laughter, small, hesitant, but real. Kunle still spent his days walking the city with his worn briefcase, knocking on office doors that never opened. But that Monday, something unexpected happened. At a small company in Dugby, the manager studied his CV and looked up. "You were once a bank officer." "Yes, sir," Kunle said cautiously. The manager leaned back. "We've just opened a new microfinance branch. We need someone who understands both the books and the people. Can you start tomorrow?" Kunle blinked, hardly daring to breathe. Yes, sir, I can." By the time he returned home, his shirt clung to him with sweat, but his face glowed with joy. Mabel knew before he spoke. She rose from her chair, tears spilling down her cheeks as he whispered, "A door has opened." That same week, David, still shaken from his brush with danger, went with Tolu to her school debate competition. Watching his sister stand tall, arguing fearlessly about justice, something stirred in him. He saw in her the fire he thought he had lost. When the judges announced Tolu as the winner, David clapped until his palms stung. In that moment, he realized his role was not to find shortcuts, but to stand beside his family, to rise with them. That night, the family gathered at the old wooden table. The food was still simple, but their spirits were rich. Mabel clasped her husband's hand and looked at her children. "This is what I meant," she said softly. "God in us, not in the money, not in the house, not even in the answers we prayed for, but in us. Together, standing, surviving, believing." For the first time in a long time, even David whispered Amen. And as the night settled over the Adewale home, it was not heavy with fear, but alive with hope, proof that even in the darkest valleys, light can find a way through the cracks. Months passed, and the Adewale family's life slowly began to change. Kunle's new job at the microfinance company was not glamorous, but it brought stability. For the first time in years, rent was paid on time. The landlord no longer knocked on their door with threats. Tolu thrived at school, her debate trophy shining proudly on the shelf. Femi, with his endless songs and prayers, became the family's source of laughter. And David, once angry and restless, had found work helping at the microfinance office part-time. More than that, he had found direction. He spoke often with Kunle about studying business and one day starting something of his own. But the real transformation was not in their circumstances, it was in their hearts. One Sunday morning, they all sat together in their small church. As the choir sang, Mabel looked at her family, her eyes brimming with tears. She remembered the nights of hunger, the landlord's threats, the envelope under David's pillow, the weight of almost losing everything. Yet here they were still standing. When the pastor preached about God dwelling not in temples but in people, Mabel's heart burned. She squeezed Kunle's hand, whispering, "That's our story. God in us." David, sitting beside her, bowed his head. For the first time, he prayed not out of fear or anger, but out of gratitude. After service, as they walked home through the busy streets of Ibadan, the sun warm on their backs, they laughed together, laughter that came from scars healed and hope restored. Their walls had spoken despair once, trembling with fear and silence. Now they spoke life, faith, and resilience. The Adewale family was far from perfect, and their journey was far from over. But they had discovered something unshakable, that no matter how heavy the burden, no matter how dark the night, God in us is enough.